The country is in a global pandemic, and there are questions on whether this ACC football season should even be played. On a moment's notice, everything can change. But as long as there is a season, we will be talking Pitt. We look at the first week of training camp and more on this week's Hail to Pitt podcast.
What was your message about finishing it in these final 30 minutes?
Well, it happened in West Virginia where we knocked off number 2. It happened in South Carolina, and it's happening in Pittsburgh today.
Our guys had a lot of guts tonight. We're just going to keep getting better. I mean, that's what it is.
One hell of a game that you will never, ever forget. We shocked the world!
Hail to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt! This is the week of August 15th, 2020. And this is the Hail to Pitt podcast. I am University of Pittsburgh graduate Alan.
I am University of Pittsburgh graduate Vince.
And I am University of Pittsburgh graduate Pam.
We're back for now. 2020 football season. College football been turned inside out. Craziness, talking about we want to play, they shouldn't play, we're stopping playing, we're not going to play, we're moving to the spring. No one knows what's going on, no one knows what's up, no one knows what's down. We're here. No one knows what the future holds, but we're still here. Thank God we're still here. Not quite sure if football should be played, but if Pitt's playing, we're talking about it, and they might just do that. And there's tons of news to get to on this edition of hashtag H2P Show. And we are on Twitter, at H2P Show on Twitter. Hail2Pitt podcast at gmail.com if you want to email us. Give us your thoughts. Do you want them to play? That's hail the number 2 Pitt podcast at gmail.com. We appreciate the feedback anywhere we're commenting, Twitter, Panther Lair, wherever you see us. And of course, this is a production of Pretty Easy Podcasts. Go to prettyeasypodcast.com if you'd like to start your own podcast while you're sitting home in quarantine, not seeing anybody and forgetting what socializing is. You could do that through a podcast. It's a great thing. That's what we're doing right now, Pam.
Absolutely. We love our friends at Pretty Easy Podcast. It's a perfect social distancing activity.
Very much so. But football, I'm not so sure, Pam. That's the big question. The ACC at least put some kind of plan together to make up for the fact that, like our nation, the NCAA is fractured in its thinking. Everybody has a different thought process when it comes to how to approach this pandemic. The ACC is on right now, as we talk about the Pitt Panthers, on the side of we're going to play, and we have 10 conference games scheduled with one non-conference game. That's what we're going to do. There will be no divisions. They have the format, at least, which is the first step, but not the most important step. The most important step is how the hell are you going to protect kids from getting sick?
Yeah, I think we leave those discussions up to the medical experts. It's a whole new world out there, and I applaud, I don't say this very often, but I applaud the Big Ten and also the Pac-12 and doing the right thing.
Clarify, everyone in the Big Ten except Penn State will applaud.
Right. I mean, yeah.
Well, and it should also be pointed out that, even though the Big Ten is canceling or at least postponing their season, there are some of those Big Ten schools that still want to play.
Yeah,
and want to play badly and are investigating other avenues.
Yes.
There's a lot of wild men in Nebraska that are
all the Scott Frost jokes about, you can go 5-7 in the American Conference, Scott Frost. There's some good Scott Frost jokes out there on the internet if you want to read that. Scott Frost is just speeding up his firing, all that.
I think James Franklin's also kind of come out too that he wants to play. What if they go rogue and just like start a new off-brand Big Ten and play each other without consent of of the commissioner or anybody in charge. Who knows what's going to happen with them? At least the ACC is kind of on the same page in that regard until they aren't.
For now.
But then also you got to include Notre Dame is also in that group. And I think it was earlier today I was flipping through the TV and I saw their jerk-off coach talking about how he wants to play, and they're so prepared to play, and 99% of their tests are negative, and they're going to be fine. But who the hell knows? And then you got Miami, Ohio scheduled, Vince. That's not happening.
No, it is not. Miami, Ohio was going to be the one non-conference game that the Panthers were going to have, and then the MAC is postponing their season. So Pitt is, I guess, going to be looking for another opponent for that week 1 game. This was kind of I couldn't quite understand why the ACC decided to have this one non-conference game, because they had to have known that the SEC wasn't going to have a non-conference game. I could see if they wanted to preserve those conference versus conference rivalries, but it was just a day later.
The SEC made the decision, and from what I heard, the SEC was a little PO'd that the ACC kind of scrapped a bunch of non-conference games. So the SEC said, we're going to stick it to you. There's no way, I'm going to tell you right now, regardless of what happens this season, there's no way they can have non-conference play just for the lack of teams.
Well, I just don't understand why that. I guess it's just a reflection of what's going on in the college football world and in the country. People aren't talking to each other and coming up with one plan there. And now that leaves Pitt looking for another non-conference opponent.
Who knows what will go on with that game? I say bring on Brian Kelly and Notre Dame twice. We want them both times. We want twice in 1 year. That's what I'm hoping for. But you've got a bunch of changes to the Pitt schedule that, I mean, if they all happen, it's a big shuffling of the deck, and it's quite the schedule now. I think it just sucks. No fans could go to some of these games, most likely. But here we go. We got some changes to talk about as the ACC, as of this moment, we said week of August 15th. The show's being recorded, though, live on tape on August 12th. So as of now, full disclosure, Pam, the ACC is playing. Who knows what happens? But the latest statement from the league is the ACC will continue to make decisions based on medical advice, inclusive of our medical advisory group, local and state health guidelines, and do so in a way that appropriately coincides with our university's academic missions. Yeah, so that's just a whole bunch of mumbo. You know who also said the same thing, Pam, was Michael Jackson's doctors said that as he was touring, and they were pumping him full of drugs. So I don't know what the hell that statement means. I like what the Big 12 commissioner said, though. Bob Bowlesby, you sent me this quote right before we started recording, who said, that if we get to the place where our doctors and scientists say, you know what, you guys got 2 wheels off the track, we're headed for a train wreck, we'll pivot that day. That's clearer language that we can all get behind. Bob Bowlesby speaking a little bit of truth, even though the Big 12 is kind of ready to get on that train, get into that train wreck, it appears.
At least he's being honest and preparing people if the train falls off the track. But once again, with a lot of things, we don't know what the train off the track looks like. We've seen it in baseball. We all thought a week or 2 weeks ago baseball was going to get canceled when the Marlins had an outbreak, and then the Cardinals had an outbreak, and they're just like, we're going to make up the schedule on the fly. Maybe these teams have to pivot the schedules on the fly. We don't know. I want to know what the
MLB has over college football. I mean, that's just, they're able to pivot. Right. They're able to be fluid with this. This is and then these are also players with rights. We're talking about a league where players have no rights as well. We have to throw that in there. And then compound the fact that a lot of these schools that are fighting to play are because their school relies so heavily on football. The thing about Pitt is, Vince, I mean, football makes some money, but that's not the end-all, be-all at our university. Others it is, and it's I think that through this pandemic showing that that's not sustainable if you're certain universities in the country. Thank God Pitt is a place that's going to be able to get along and do things without, if football misses a season. I just feel it's crazy that the fight is so hard for this, and that's only because there's so much money behind it. A school like Pitt, if it wasn't in the ACC, would not be fighting tooth and nail like this.
I don't. I mean, they do get a lot of money from being in the ACC and being on television. But
of course,
the one thing I will say that there's, I guess, somewhat of an advantage for well, not really an advantage, but maybe in a little bit better spot as some of these other schools is that the city of Pittsburgh economy does not revolve around 7 or 8 home games per year as other schools, other towns out there that that there's not really anything going on.
I'm not even sure the North Shore economy
days.
I'm not even sure the North Shore economy revolves around them, quite frankly.
No, it does not. They probably revolve more around the other football teams, but it's a tough situation. It's not a good situation. But as of right now, they're playing, and you got to think also, if there wasn't so much money, they probably wouldn't be playing.
Let me ask you guys a question. With the new format and the schedule, we talked about Notre Dame's now in the ACC, no divisions.
Yeah.
So no more Coastal Division champion possibilities. Do you think this is a good format for the ACC this year and also moving forward? Conferences.
Yeah, moving forward, it's intriguing because we've seen how the Coastal is just, insanity, and then you get to Clemson and you get knocked down. Maybe if there was more going through the ringer, it would be tougher on teams like them. I don't know. I like the idea of divisions. I like the idea. The thing I like about the pandemic is it's forcing everybody to be regionalized. Like it's 1940s college football, which is kind of fun. But I dig it for sure for, pandemic football. I'm all for making up these asterisk seasons formats. This is totally fine. I would not be in support of it for, a regular, normal, college football season.
You can. And I think it works really well for right now because you could play almost everybody. If you're in a regular season when you're only playing 8 conference games, you kind of have to go to a divisional format because the schedules would be way too unbalanced in order to pick your top 2.
Well, what if they went to more conference games, 9 or 10? Don't some other conferences?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about that. I
mean, do we really need to see Youngstown?
Miami,
Ohio.
I agree with you on that part, but I still like having several non-conference games a year to keep things fresh, new opponents, which I do like.
You could really squeeze out those schools though if you limited the amount of non-conference. I mean, and if all the Power Fives did that, and then they would only face each other. In the non-conference games, that would screw over smaller schools, but it'd be,
it would.
But for this season, it's going to be, we'll see how, I would have to see how it plays out if this whole thing gets played. But I feel like you'd also be, you would end up essentially with similar schedules anyway, because these teams are all going to want to play the same teams that they always play. There are a lot of these games you can't keep off a schedule or fans will be pissed, and it's just, you have to have those. I feel like Pitt has to play Miami every year. I don't want to see a year where they're not on the schedule, do you? But that could happen if you switch the format.
Well, and even looking at the schedule this year, I always enjoy, not as much recently, but the past few years, the Pitt Duke 50-point shootout games are always fun. And now we don't get that.
Or the annual North Carolina's referee screwjob game, which is not going to be taking place this year.
Yeah, thank God for that. Yeah, we
Thursday night game.
we got all these changes, and none of these games have dates, do they?
Yes, they do. They all have dates. Every single one of them.
So we have dates now as well in the So the
Marshall's on the 12th, correct?
We're not playing Marshall.
Well, I know.
was on the 12th.
Marshall was supposed to be on the 12th.
That's
yes.
correct.
So now,
Miami of Ohio was supposed to be the 5th.
So,
but now we open on, we're not sure what's going to happen with that non-conference week, but we open against Syracuse on the 19th.
Yes.
We have a date.
And then we'll run through the schedule here. The Duke game the Syracuse game was originally a Richmond game. That's game number 1. Then the Duke game is now the Louisville game. The road game at Miami is now the NC State game. The bye week is now on the road at Boston College. And then the Notre Dame game that Vince and Pam were going to miss is now on the road at Miami. And they'll still probably miss that game. No going to Miami. I might be able to make it to go sit in the parking lot. Maybe they'll let me do that for that game. The Georgia Tech game is now the Notre Dame game. And the road game at Florida State's now a bye. Florida State shifts a week. That was the Virginia Tech game. And the final game of the year is not North Carolina. As Vince said, it is now on the road at Georgia Tech. The new schedule. Totally different schedule.
Yeah.
And then there's two more games.
There's 2 more games. I know they're the toughest opponents, and we probably want to forget about them. We have Virginia Tech and at Clemson.
The final game, excuse me, I was saying of the changes. Those games, well, the Virginia Tech game.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the Virginia Tech game move, and then the Clemson game, and all of a sudden Clemson's on the schedule. And here we go. The ACC is they're ready. They put a lot of thought into that. I wonder how pissed they're going to be when they say we did all that work rescheduling for nothing, because they're going to end up postponing. I'm super worried about a postponement though, because spring football is still alive after earlier this month too, Vince, and that could be affected by college football moving to the spring. Everything's shifting over, but if it's for the sake of health and wellness, I'm all for it.
Yeah, a lot of changes here, and we'll see how it shakes out. But as of right now, if this is what Pitt has to go up against, I think it's much more difficult than what they were going to just several months ago, and that's a thing that we looked at this year, that Pitt was going to not only projected to have a very good team, but a relatively manageable schedule. And I think it's gotten considerably harder here, especially with a trip to Death Valley now on the schedule. Just going to make it that much tougher in order to get to that ACC title game. And
it's going to be back-to-back games against Clemson, too, most likely.
Yes.
In the ACC championship game coming 2 weeks after the Clemson game.
Yeah, and if you look at Pitt's got a lot of long road trips here, at Miami, at Florida State, at Virginia, at Georgia Tech, at Clemson. Really only one bye week during the season. Pitt, the only ACC team in that position because of math, and they were the one that was chosen, unfortunately. So that
short end.
So that's not good. But that's what they're up against, and that's what they're going to have to deal with in order to make it to that ACC title game. The schedule's a lot of unbalance. You look at Duke and North Carolina. They don't have to play Notre Dame and Clemson on the same schedule. I don't think North Carolina doesn't have to do that either. So it's going to be difficult. But if this Panther team's as good as we think they are, they should be up to the challenge.
Yeah, we do add Boston College, correct?
Yeah.
So that's in my mind, that's kind of like replacing Virginia, like a similar.
Yeah, I'd say that's similar, but there ain't no replacement for Clemson. That's
no, and NC State isn't the best either, and maybe that's replacing.
But that Louisville squad. With your coach Scott Satterfield,
I love the Louisville team.
That's going to be a tough game that they're going to have to play early in the season.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to have to really get on things.
Yeah, they play hard, Louisville. That's a tough. But then you get rid of North Carolina, and then you get, like you said, screwed with adding Clemson there. So,
and then you also have to throw in, looking at personnel, if games actually do get played, which of these ACC teams have had a bigger opt-out than Jaylen Twyman. I mean, that he's declared for the draft and was, on all the preseason awards watch lists, was going to destroy everybody in this conference, but instead is going to take the time to stay safe at home with family and get ready for his NFL career, trying to be the next Aaron Donald. Has anyone in the conference lost anyone as important as Jaylen Twyman?
Yeah,
important.
Yeah, I'd make Caleb Farley of Virginia Tech, the defensive back. He's very good.
Yeah.
He's I'd say that's a on par loss for that Virginia Tech defense.
Yeah, a projected first-round pick, as is Gregory Rousseau, defensive lineman from Miami. So Pitt isn't the only one that's lost a big-time player, but man, Jaylen Twyman is so good and so important to what Pitt did best last year, which was get after the quarterback. It's going to be tough to replace this kid.
Not to mention Keyshawn Camp coming back. Imagine that, what we were hoping for last year was supposed to happen this year. That's a big, big, big loss, but nobody could fault Jaylen Twyman, who has huge dollar signs in his future. And with the uncertainty of the rest of his college career, why take the chance? I definitely would have made the same exact decision if I was him.
Twyman said he's going to return home to be with his family, that this is not about COVID-19. This is about my family's needs and now and in the future. So, we got to respect his decision. He's doing what's best for him and his family. We got to applaud that. But
I got to say, with that decision, what I'm really glad is that Devin Danielson last year got so many reps that I didn't really see coming. But those are going to, I think, prove to be valuable for the depth of the D-line.
That's what we got to talk about right now. Who's going to replace this kid, Jaylen Twyman? Who's going to replace him? You mentioned down the TJ Dragon, Devin Danielson. We talked about Keyshawn Camp coming back from an injury. Hopefully he's back healthy. But then you also got David Green, a redshirt sophomore. Cansey, a redshirt freshman. Bentley, a redshirt sophomore. I'd say, outside of Camp, you got, 4 guys there that are, have had action in games, but are relatively unproven. They haven't shown that they could do it over a course of an entire season. And I think that they're in the position right now where they need at least 2 of these guys to be to really step up and be big-time players if they're going to approach the level that they did last year.
Well, the exciting thing is that Pitt D linemen are, as of late, have been really stepping up when given the opportunities. There's usually a guy each season who really improves and, shows up big. Let's see if someone could take that kind of Jaylen Twyman leap. That's going to be a big one. Keyshawn Camp coming back, though, I'm super pumped for that. He no longer has to worry about going to Pitt Arts shows, which I saw him at, a lot of the theater productions on campus. I think we had a lot of those similar classes a couple semesters ago. But he is going to be on the football field now, which would be good to see. And, it's going to be still a great team, I think. I'm very optimistic for the Pitt Panthers. It's going to suck that it's not a full-fledged, a regular old college football season to see where they stack up nationally, but seeing where they stack up in the ACC, arguably the best conference in America, Pam, it's still going to be exciting if they could pull it off, which I'm going to right now go out and say I just don't think it can happen. As good as exciting as this team is, as good as I think they will be, if I'm a decision maker, I wouldn't put them out there. I don't know how in football, and especially college football, you can manage this. Oakland seeing move-in week this week, already kind of turning into a disaster. Students are complaining on social media about, unmitigated disasters of big nights of partying and people getting together, and who knows what the numbers will look like in a couple weeks whenever everybody's, tested and whatnot. But with football coming back, geez, oh man, these players. Maybe if they got paid, that I would have a different tune, Pam, but they do not. This is a sticky situation. But we do have a big training camp a big meaty section of training camp notes here to get to, because they are practicing currently. They are playing. And apparently they have tight ends on this team, and they just got another one, Vince. Wait, time out, though. You got only 30 seconds. Pam said 30 seconds to talk about Pitt's new tight end.
Well, he's not going to be lining up for the Panthers this year. But there has a couple recruiting notes that we'll go over. Tight end Jake Renda, this kid, 6'5", 220 pounds, originally from New Jersey, but he transferred down to IMG Academy in Florida. You know we like those guys from IMG. This kid was originally committed to Michigan State, flipping over to Pitt. He's got a lot of family in the Pittsburgh area. So I'm excited to see what he could do here. He used to play quarterback when he was up in New Jersey. Somebody who also had offers from North Carolina State, Boston College, Arizona, in addition to Michigan State. So you gotta like
4,
a tight end that he's got some quarterback experience.
1.
Hopefully he can at least catch the ball.
That's let's hope. Kmar Mimes, Kai Wright, current tight ends for the Pitt Panthers. I'm going to say I have no hope for them, because why would I? This team can't get a tight end to catch the ball. But are they getting any love in camp right now? Is there any word about what they're doing?
Well, not those particular individuals, but the coach did call out tight end Lucas Kroll,
good,
a transfer from Florida, and this is certainly the only tight end with a lot of experience on the roster. And this guy, he could either, he could really take this offense to heights it hasn't seen in a while if he could just catch the ball, and if he could get open and catch it. I think that could be absolutely huge. I mean, how many times last year did we have just so many drops from tight ends? You could go back into the archives and listen to some of our previous episodes talking about, lackluster performances from tight ends. But
I want to listen to an old podcast to hear about how terrible Pitt tight ends were in 2019. That's what I want to do.
The sad part is that, during these times of quarantine where you gotta manufacture your own entertainment and content, that might be something you gotta listen to.
It's a thing to do. Also in camp, Dontavius Butler-Jenkins done with football due to injury. Rashad Wheeler, not Weaver, done with football. The fullback, big old fullback. Are those big? How big of a loss are those two, Vince? I mean, Wheeler. I mean, in terms of run blocking and being a bus driver.
Well, yeah, I'm a big fan of having a fullback, and Daniel Carter, a redshirt freshman, he just played in a handful of games last year at the fullback position. I think that's really the only guy they got. But at the same time, they hardly used the fullback last year, so I'm not sure how big of a loss this is. And then Butler Jenkins, the receiver, this guy, very up and down in his career. It looked like he had a lot of talent. I know there's a lot of guys on the depth chart there. Just too much of a battle with injuries. But Pam, I know you were really high on this particular player, and now we're not going to be able to see him anymore.
Butler Jenkins.
Yeah.
I really liked him coming into Pitt, but that's unfortunately the nature of the beast with injuries there. Wheeler, I know you're a big fan of the fullback, Vince, but we didn't see the fullback used too much in Whipple's offense. So I feel like if they need a fullback, they can put a tight end back there occasionally, or just put up 3-4 tight ends on the line and have everyone run behind
I don't know if you want in this offense, you want to put 3 or 4 tight ends.
Stand there and take up space and have someone leap over them.
That sounds like a terrible idea. I'd rather just spread 5 wide and then just run it with Kenny. Kenny Pickett on the Johnny Unitas watch list, by the way, who's looking good. He's still getting haircuts, even in which not a lot of people do these days. Hair looking good. And we got Israel Abadaconda, the one we're all waiting for. Waiting a whole nother, even to spring, to see him run the ball, Vince. I don't know if I can. That's the one thing I'm going to be upset about most if they do postpone the season.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this kid. And with the the vast inconsistency of the running backs that are returning from last year, this is really anybody's backfield, I think. AJ Davis, he got the bulk of the work, but I wouldn't say he was anything special. And then Vincent Davis, he showed a lot of good flashes when he was in there, but it didn't get a whole lot of playing time. Maybe he didn't know all the plays. Maybe he just struggled with pass blocking or something of that nature. Did not get him on the field more, Pam. And Todd Sibley, a player that you really like, he kept getting hurt.
Yeah, but I do think Vincent Davis is kind of the wild card that I'd like to see used more this year.
Yeah, especially if he does not make a big jump, Alan. You got to think Abanaconda is going to be able to have every opportunity in the world to come in there and be the starter in the backfield.
Oh, yeah, I think he's definitely going to get a crack at it. And he's going to have to take advantage. I don't think, we've seen how Whipple with running backs. I don't think you get a whole lot of leash, especially if you're a freshman. So you got to produce real quick to convince this guy. But I think what we've seen on tape and flashes for on social media of Abanaconda, that guy looks like he's capable of some crazy splash plays. I have a question though. As camp, which we never really know what's really going on in camp, but now especially it's on super lockdown. Can Narduzzi and company try out even some crazy trick plays or some crazy new formations or something totally bizarre and out of the ordinary for the Pitt Panthers, since they know for certain nobody's watching?
Well, you always got to be worried about drones and so forth, watching your practices. But I'd imagine that they are going to probably have a little bit more liberty to really get out there and try some more stuff and maybe practice a little bit more, that they don't have to worry about, media watchers and
oh my God, you know how I feel about the free press. That's a whole, I could do a 4-hour podcast about how COVID is terrible for media and it's setting bad precedents.
I agree.
Media watchers, that's their job. How are you going to get this information? How are we going to get the information if someone lines up in a weird position without the media? You should want the media there as someone who consumes this information.
I agree with you, but Coach doesn't feel that way. That's all I'm going to say.
I don't give a damn what Coach thinks.
So in camp, what are you looking forward to the most? What are you hoping that comes from this camp the most, Pam?
For me, I think it's a kind of a newer question. Who's going to step up and fill Twyman's shoes? Is it going to be Danielson and Camp? I think those are your two immediate fill-ins, but who else is going to get some good reps there and who else is going to shine? I think that's the biggest thing. And then the second thing for me is the skill position players on offense, specifically at the wide receiver position, who can take that next step. Those are the two big questions I want to see moving forward in camp.
How about you, Vince?
Well, I'm going to say, if you look at the offensive line, which was a big problem at different times during the year, assuming Carter Warren really takes a big step and is able to anchor that left tackle spot, I'm curious to see who's going to end up playing the right tackle position. It seems like everything else is somewhat solidified, but there's going to be somebody stepping in there that doesn't really have a ton of, on-field real game reps, and, getting as much protection for Kenny Pickett is going to be, just one of the most important things to the success of the season. And I'll give another one on the defensive side of the ball. As much as we talked about this defensive line, this defensive backfield with the corners that they have with Mathis and Pinnock, and how good the safety tandem is with Hamlin and Ford, maybe one of the best safety tandems in the entire country. But, as we saw last year, when one of those guys was out of the lineup, they weren't quite as strong. Guys, especially with Hamlin and Ford, missing some games and halves due to personal foul, helmet-to-helmet hits. The defensive backfield just wasn't as good. So I'm curious to see who the third corner is going to be, who the third safety is going to be. There's some tremendous athletes there, and Coach Narduzzi, he knows what he's talking about when he's looking for his defensive backs, and he's got some guys kind of waiting in the wings. I'm very curious to see who those top 2 reserves are going to be. I think that's going to be one of the keys to this defense being as good as we think it can be.
And I'm hoping in camp we see health and virus control, for the love of God, and maybe also hearing that Mark Whipple plans on abandoning use of tight ends altogether. That's what I'm hoping for. Camp underway. Watch those social media gimmicks for any. I have not seen one. I haven't seen one picture from camp. I don't know if I'm looking hard enough, but
I don't know. Think you're looking
except for what except for what Pitt has
might
put
make
out.
you upset. Yeah, there's a in terms of health and virus protocol.
Yeah, I've only seen like the We Workin' promo videos they're putting out and that stuff like that. Let's see. Speaking of social media gimmicks, let's go online and see what they're saying on the Pitternet.
Can you explain what internet is?
I hear there's rumors on the internets. And to all those faceless keyboard warriors on Twitter.
But we're a good darn football team. I'm proud of these guys.
Okay. Let's see on social media. Let's go to Twitter first on the Pitternet. Justin the Prez, Justin M. Pondexter says, Pitt be kicking it. These kickers gonna be good this year. I mean, Justin's looking for multiple kickers here to be good this year, Vince. He's looking for Kessman and Christodoulou. I haven't seen a lot of hype on social media about Pitt kickers, but someone's actually tweeting about them. It's interesting.
Good.
Do you think he's got to be a close personal friend of Alex Kessman then? I don't
know about that. Specifically, I'll talk about that Notre Dame game last year. There was some missed field goals in that game. Or am I thinking of 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. There was some missed field goals there that really were a problem and led to losing that game. Yeah, the kicking game is very important. There's no doubt about that. And both these kids are going to have to perform well, especially with an offense that may struggle.
K-Wagon on Pitt Reddit says, on the thread about Jaylen Twyman opting out, I suddenly care a lot less about the season happening. Oh, that's sad. I mean, because, Pitt's a great next man up program, I feel. I mean, we saw last year with Rashad Weaver, Vince. I mean, this is a great player. We're losing, but if the season happens, you should care for the health, safety of the players, and then winning, beating all the other ACC teams.
Yeah, we were, a year ago at this time, we were talking about how we were, we had a lot of questions about this defensive line, specifically the pass rush with Weaver being out. But, this was probably, the best defensive line in a decade since that great Pitt defensive line of 2009, Alan. And they have potential, even without Twyman, they have a potential to be that good. And I really hope that they do. And there's still a lot to be excited about, specifically on the defensive line, I think.
And finally, let's go to the Pitternet, staying on Pitt Reddit, which is always a lot of fun. This is on the thread about Jalen Hood-Schifino decommitting from Pitt Hoops. And PLS King Meh said, we should just be paying recruits like the schools he's focusing on now.
Well, I haven't researched that situation enough. Hearing some, people like Chris Peak at PantherLair.com, he's made comments, that Pitt's certainly not out of it yet. This was a kid that made a decision very early in the recruiting process, and it's way too early to just, count anybody out at this point.
All right, that's what's going on in the Pitternet. Remember, you can follow us at H2P Show if you want to get at us on the Pitternet, and we'll gladly read one of your comments on whatever you're talking about Pitt, wherever you're talking to Pitt, right here on the Hail to Pitt podcast. I had a question. I think I asked on Pitt Reddit, maybe like shortly after we went on hiatus. Is Gabe Hoy related to Lori Hoy from WPXI?
Could be.
That's not a common last name, is it?
He's from Upper St. Clair, I think, or Bethel Park. One of those two.
He's from the South Hills.
A great local reporter. I don't know if she never mentions I'm the mom of a Pitt football player who might be the starting right tackle, Vince, that you mentioned earlier.
Could be.
Okay, real quick, give us some happy news about recruiting. Tell everyone about how great Elliot Donald is.
Well, we talked about Jake Rendo, which I was only given 30 seconds to talk about.
You can talk about
a little bit more time. Yeah.
And Elliot Donald, this is still a few weeks old, this news, but it's still just as good. And it's aging like a fine wine, I would say. Elliot Donald, Aaron Donald's nephew, he picked Pitt over scholarship offers from LSU, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan State, Notre Dame, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, Virginia Tech, West Virginia, Wisconsin, probably a host others. How big of a commitment is this for Pitt? How big is it for have a top 100 player right in your backyard coming to the Panthers?
It's huge, and it wasn't a surprise when he committed. I think there was a lot of speculation. I mean,
I was nervous.
There was a conspiracy theory if you zoomed in on that football. That
it turned out to be true.
Yeah,
it wasn't a conspiracy.
Yeah, true. Conspiracy. There's a lot of speculation, I guess, when that football picture was posted last. I don't know. Time doesn't exist anymore. The pandemic, a while ago. I know people were still nervous because Pitt, but this was excellent for the program. Like you said, no matter when we talk about, it's an anchor for the recruiting class. It's someone you can continue to build on that defensive side of the ball for. And I think people like his uncle, Aaron Donald, have shown it doesn't necessarily, Pitt's a good school to go to get your name known and make it to the pros. It's a good pipeline. They prepare you well.
Yeah. Absolutely, especially at that position in the recent past. So, it would. I'm just so happy he didn't go to LSU. I have too many LSU people I know who would have been giving me all kind of hell. And yeah, I probably was more nervous than anybody. But Vince, you were pretty certain the whole time. I felt like
I was fairly certain. But anytime you get a big time local kid that's waiting this long to make an announcement, it does have you a little nervous.
And how great is this?
Normally you would.
And how great is this? He's not there yet. So we don't have to worry about a wasted year because of the pandemic for Elliot Donald, most likely, Pam. Most likely.
Right, exactly.
Which is a beautiful thing. That's a lining in the sky. It's a beautiful thing to talk about. That Elliot Donald should have a full 4 years at Pitt playing real seasons. This season, we don't know if it'll happen. I want it to happen as long as it's safe and not a disaster. We'll see what happens. God, can you imagine, though? I don't want the Big Ten having one up on the ACC saying, you should have done what we did. That would be one of the early stages of hell, Pam. If the Big Ten has that over the ACC, I don't want to live in that world. So we'll wait and see what happens.
That's a world we don't want to be a part of.
No, not at all. I live in this world here in Western Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and around town. That Elliot Donald signing, people couldn't go to bars to talk to each other about it, Vince. But I was standing. I heard some people standing at in the parking lot waiting because I don't go in the stores, but my supposed to be wife goes and she'll go into a store. But I was sitting in my car and I'm hearing two old guys sitting in their cars waiting for their wives in the store talking about Elliot Donald. That's the kind of thing that's going on in this town right now.
Yeah, a lot of people talking about him. I'm just so excited for this kid, and it's so great whenever it's a local guy too, because the story's already getting written. And I feel like that makes the local people, the citizens of the city of Pittsburgh, just that much more excited for a play.
Yes, they are. So now, without further ado, let's see what they're saying about this big signing around town. In this different climate, people still get together socially distantly, social distantly, Pam? I don't know. I forgot English in quarantine.
I think the latter was right. Social distantly.
Social distantly. Let's find out
Maybe?
what the ends are. I guess. I don't know.
Another Saturday coming, and the Panthers are playing. Time to find out what the answers are saying.
You should pick on Aaron Donald, nephew.
What? Take your mask off, you Jagoff. You're 12 feet away from me.
You see Pitt got Aaron Donald's nephew.
Oh, yeah, I seen it. My buddy Don Woolley said he heard from this guy down south side that Johnson kid's better than him, though.
Get out of town. There ain't no way some kid from West Mifflin is going to be better than some kid from Central.
Who cares, you Jagoff? They're both going to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt.
What the answers are saying.
So that's what the Insers are saying. Everybody is hyped, especially that hype video he posted for Elliott Donald coming to Pitt next year. I cannot be more excited. I'm just so hyped for this defensive line. You know, even without Twyman, I'm really excited for what this defensive line can do. And next year, it's only going to keep getting better and better, bringing in more of these big-time high school players that are going to grow into finely tuned athletic machines.
Yeah! Hell yeah! And hopefully this year that D-line gets 2 cracks at Notre Dame. That's what I'm hoping for most, Pam. 2 Notre Dame games.
Well,
Give
what
me a
if,
double dose.
Well, what if they play Notre Dame in the first non-conference game? That doesn't count.
Yeah.
And then they play Notre Dame in the regular season, then they play them again in the ACC championship game.
I'd be down for that. Or just make them preseason games. Don't make them count. Get a feel for it. That would probably be really irresponsible, though, right, Pam? That's unnecessary human contact in an age
exactly.
Where I guess not. Damn it. They'll probably just not have those weeks played. We'll see what happens with it. We'll be talking about it. We're back, baby, for now. But anything left to say, Pam, as we get out of here? Our first episode back in a long-ass time.
Yeah, we'll see how long we're actually back for, but it's good to be back for now, and hail to Pitt.
Yep. Hopefully everybody could stay safe and we could keep talking Pitt.
Wear a mask.
Hail to Pitt.
Wear your damn mask and hail to Pitt.